Thylungra Station in the southwest corner of Queensland is one of the biggest sheep properties in Australia, over 1 million acres. In an average season, we run about 100,000 good-class merinos. Shearing is our busiest time. We have to muster all of the sheep and drive them to the shearing sheds. My name's David Johnson, and I'm a Jackeroo. A Jackeroo is a cadet or trainee station manager. Our company owns Thylungra, and the manager is Ned Mildren. He's boss of about 40 men. The senior Jackeroo is Bob Slaughter. He's been out on camp for a couple of weeks, mustering. It's one of the jobs we do as part of our learning how to run a station, which means that you have to be an agronomist, a veterinary surgeon, and a businessman. For Australia's biggest business is the wool industry. They've mustered 2,500 sheep in this paddock, and they'll be at the shearing shed this afternoon, ready for shearing tomorrow. It's hard to keep in touch with everything on a property this size, so the boss does a tour whenever he can, and he likes to take one of us along with him. You know, although I was born and brought up in the city, I always wanted to work on the land. After I left school, I couldn't get to an agricultural college fast enough. Then 2 years ago, I joined the company that owns this station. At times there are just as kangaroos on the place as there are sheep. They're pretty animals, but they eat an awful lot of valuable grass. I did when I first came here, but now I guess I'm part of it. One of our big problems is the dingo, the Australian wild dog. We have a man working full-time on trapping them. He's called the Dogger, and his name is Jim Reel. These dingoes kill for the pleasure of killing, not just to eat, and they can do 1,000 pounds worth of damage in a few nights. If you catch a fox in a dingo trap, the trap has to be boiled. The old dingo's too cunning to go near a trap that smells of fox. Jim gets a bonus of 10 pounds for a dingo scalp and 2 for a fox. There you are, 3 dingoes and 1 fox. A quiet bloke, Jim. Lives by himself. He might go a couple of weeks without seeing the boss or anyone else, but he's not lonely. That's his idea of peace, camping out on the run with his traps and his gun. A bit too lonely for me, though. I go Anna. Walks a bit like the boss. They're harmless. Come on, David. We have a 6-foot-high dog-proof fence around the property, but the dingoes still get in. Jim will get them, though, sooner or later. You can bet on that. Well, look at that. George Lane, the only boundary rider on a bicycle this side of Cooper Creek. Like the other boundary riders on the property, George is in charge of a number of paddocks. His job is to check the fences, see there's enough water for the stock, keep an eye out for dingoes, and look after the sheep. We all like to go and stay with George in his hut. He's a wonderful character. They say he once rode down to a Lonely Hearts Club in Brisbane and ordered a wife. He enclosed a photo of one of the young Jackaroos. In the same mail, he ordered a new pair of boots. They both turned up in the mail truck a few weeks later, but the girl went back the same day. George says the boots didn't last much longer either. In this part of the country, water is a problem. We either get too much or too little. It's a good year if we get 12 inches of rain. So if it doesn't fall from the sky, we have to drag it out of the ground with pumps. We've got about 50 windmills, and because they're so important, it takes a specialist to look after them. Our expert is Cuffy. He's pulling the pump rods out of the bore to carry out maintenance work. Most of the Jackeroos like working on the mills, especially Mick Scott, who's very good at mechanical things. But I'm all thumbs and don't like heights. The mill expert has to make sure that every mill in the place is kept in first-class condition. If a mill breaks down, and it isn't discovered pretty quickly, hundreds of sheep can perish. There's one thing about being up a mill. It's one of the few places where you can get a good view of this flat country. And it's cooler up here than working down there in the yards, where the dust is like fine brown flour, creeping into your mouth, nose and ears, and pasting itself on your face like a mask. The sheep are being driven up through the forcing pens into the race, where they'll be drafted. It's hot, exhausting work in the yards, with the sun blazing and the temperature over the 100. The sheep are pushed along the race to the drafting gate, where Edgar Adams, the head overseer, drafts them. By moving the gates, he directs the sheep into different yards according to their age. Edgar's a top man with sheep. They say he knows everyone on the property by its first name. True or not, he's always ready to share his knowledge with the Jackeroos. Well, that job's done. It's time for Smoko. We don't work exactly by the clock. We have our smokos when we get hungry or when there's time. We all take our turn at swinging the billy. Working out on camp together, you get to know your mates pretty well. Be hard to find a better bunch of fellows than these. There goes the flying doctor. The flying doctor's always on call, and just as well, because in our business the busted broken nose are always on the cards. Besides emergency calls, the doc pays us a routine visit each month. Tim O'Leary was born in Ireland, but he's pretty much an expert now on both Australia and its people. That's Bob Slaughter's mob on its way to the shearing shed. Your doctor's maybe a mile or two away. Ours is 100 or more. But when he's wanted, our doctor arrives just as quickly as yours. That's Thylungra Homestead. The first settlers pitched camp there 80 years ago. The waterhole means that the boss's wife can have the sort of garden she wants. It's the sort of garden everyone would like. Green and cool. Dr. Tim not only cures the sick and pulls out teeth, but his visit is a regular social occasion. People from other stations, up to 50 miles away, come to see their friends as well as to see the doctor. There's not a fellow here who couldn't tell you some true yarn about the doctor saving someone's life, or about somebody performing an emergency operation under his instructions given over the radio. The aircraft landing strip is a couple of miles from the homestead. To get to it, you pass one of the shearing sheds. Well, there's Bob Slaughter with his mob. Another 2,500. And with wool at 65 pence a pound, that means a cheque for more than 7,000 pounds from this mob alone. The day's work is nearly over for Bob and his mates, but they still have to ride out and make camp for the night. Tomorrow morning they'll start to muster another paddock. All our shearing is done by a shearing contractor, so our job ends when we get the sheep to the yards. But one of the overseers is generally around, and the boss likes to call into the shed each day to see how things are going. We Jackaroos don't have much to do with the shearing, but it's part of our training to know all about it. This is a 10-stand shed. That means there are 10 shearers working. Experienced men shear between 150 and 200 sheep a day. They are paid on the number of sheep they shear. So from the start at 7:30 in the morning until the knock-off bell at 5:30 in the afternoon, it's a race to see who can get the most sheep shorn. The picker-up throws the fleece on the table where the wool rollers skirt away the stained, greasy and burry wool. But this is not wasted. It goes to the piece pickers for further sorting. The fleece is then rolled with the shoulder up so that the wool classer can grade the wool. The classer tells at a glance the condition and quality of the wool. When there's enough in a bin, the pressers make up a bale. Just on 5:30, the end of the day. Last bale pressed, and the last tally made.
wear red pajamas. She'll be wearing red pajamas when she comes. Oh, she'll be coming
Put a
round.
sock in it.
She comes when she comes. She'll be coming round.
What a hullabaloo. The same every evening in our quarters. Having a good mob of blokes to work with is half the battle. We knock out plenty of fun. Being a Jackeroo and learning to manage a property isn't just sheep and horses and dogs. We're supposed to know how to be good hosts, how to entertain visitors to the station. So when we're at the homestead, we have dinner with the boss. People in the city sometimes think that life in the outback is primitive, but most city women would envy Mrs. Mildren's house and garden. We have everything here that we need for a comfortable life, all the civilized amenities. And more than that, there's a sense of freedom and independence that's hard to understand until you've experienced it. And the people are real people. They're not afraid to be themselves. And I like that. Mick's always running late. When you've been up a mill or in the yards all day, a collar and tie feels a bit like a hangman's rope. Mick and I reckon this dressing up business can be overdone. I know where I'd like to be. Out with Bob Slaughter and the boys. What smells better than wood smoke in the cool of the evening? Unless it's chops grilling in the flames. Who'd change this job for a job behind a desk? Not me, anyway. Being a Jackeroo has its drawbacks. What job hasn't? But the way I look at it, a man doing this work is helping the country to grow. You're part and parcel not only of the work of the pioneer settlers who opened up this part of Australia, but of the Australia to come. That's it, I guess. You're a part of Australia.